Hey, welcome everybody. Well, sorry we're a few minutes late. We were having some technical difficulties here with Zoom, but thanks for hanging with
I mean,
us.
no doubt, Betsy, you're hanging out in the Teak forest. I imagine that the technical difficulties would be substantial. So,
Always in the
uh
forest.
yeah.
But while we wait for a few more folks to log in here, if you want to find that question and answer button on your control panel and just type where you're calling in from tonight, we'd love to see who we've got on the line. All right, we've got Virginia. Oh, somebody at Grand Bayman in Belize, Ohio. Florida, all over the place. Excellent. Well, we're glad that you could join us tonight. Oh, a couple
Indeed.
from Florida. Oh, wow. Three folks from Florida right in a row. What do you know? All right. Well, don't want to take up any more of your time, so we will get this going here. Oh, golly. Share.
All right. So I should be able to start, right, Betsy?
You should, yeah.
All right. Let me. We good?
We're good. Yep.
All right. Very good. Well, everybody, thank you for joining us this evening. We're headed into the holiday season, of course, and sometimes people are thinking, what do we get that kid or grandkid that has everything, right? They already have everything they want and everything they need, and so we've put together this program called the Gift of Teak, and I'm assuming that many of you have heard about this in the past, have seen some of the information. We're going to run through that stuff pretty quickly, kind of get to the end where we talk about how you can actually do some incredible gifting using the gift tax exclusion, which is pretty important if you're thinking about estate planning and stuff like that. So the opportunity here is to really pass wealth into the future. Generational wealth stewardship is really the concept, and Teak is a phenomenal tool to do that. In fact, I would actually say that timber generally, but Teak in this case specifically, maybe is the ultimate tool in generational wealth stewardship. And we'll talk about some of those reasons why in a little bit. But Teak for profit, Teak for peace of mind. We do have the generational wealth stewardship, which is the profit element. But the other element is the element of residency and peace of mind and plan B. So many people are looking for a plan B, right? Whether you're ready to do something, maybe you are, maybe you're not. But having a way to do something else, having a residency overseas, a plan B, it's wise, it's prudent. A lot of folks are taking advantage of that. And Teak gives us an incredible path to a residency overseas. We'll touch on that lightly today. It's not the specific element of this presentation. This is more about generational wealth stewardship and gifting of Teak. But if you have questions about residency and how Teak can give you that, we've got a great group of property consultants and residency consultants on staff. They will help you answer all of the questions about that particular element of the ability of Teak to deliver that as well. So let's go ahead and get started. I always like to point out that we've been around for a long time. I think that's important. In fact, it's really important, right? Because a lot of companies are kind of new in the business. We've been doing real estate development in Latin America since 1996. I've been working in finance down there since 1993. And as you'll see here in a moment, our teak plantation was conceived in 1998 and planted in 1999. Map of Panama, you can kind of see Panama actually runs east-west, which is a little bit of a surprise to a lot of people if you haven't seen it on a map or paid attention. A lot of times we think Panama is north-south, but it's actually an east-west country. The province furthest in the east is the Darien province, and that province has some of the absolute best locations from a geographic standpoint to grow teak. I like to start with a story. So this was 1998, and as you see, I'm in my home in Shepherdstown, West Virginia tonight, and literally right across the street here is the Bavarian Inn, and every Tuesday morning they have a Rotary meeting at 7:30 a.m., And you can get there a little bit early, have breakfast, chat with people, and I think they ding the bell at 7:50, 10 to 8. You actually start the meeting part. But I was running off to Panama during 1998 and early 1999, looking for a piece of property that we could plant teak on. And I remember missing meetings. And back then, I mean, probably still true in a lot of clubs, if you missed a meeting, you had to go up front and put $10 in the donation jar because you missed a meeting. And so I was up front a lot because I was missing a lot of meetings. And people at my table would kind of razz me. Yeah, Cobb, what are you doing? I'd say, hey, I'm going to Panama. I'm going to buy this piece of land. We're going to plant teak trees. And in 25 years, we're going to harvest them. We're going to make a lot of money. And they'd be like, are you crazy? 25 years? And my answer was this. Look, in 25 years, I'm either going to need the money and I'm going to be really glad I did this, or in 25 years, I'm not going to need the money and I'm going to be really glad I did this. Well, 25 years has come. And that's the thing we have to remember, right? 25 years will come. I mean, there's no guarantee of tomorrow, of course, but 25 years will come for us. Maybe it'll probably come for our children or our grandchildren, right? So we have to plan for that. And so if we know that 25 years is more than likely to happen for us, our kids, or our grandkids, let's plan accordingly, right? And so it's exactly what we did. Back in 1998, I knew that I didn't know very much about reforestation. In fact, I knew next to nothing about it. And so I spent some time down at the Library of Congress, checking out books and other information about teak and timber, so that I could actually go to Panama and interview forestry companies. It wasn't like I was going to get this book learning and go do it myself. No, no, no. I was reading the books and understanding sort of the methodologies and some of the big picture concepts of what teak was, so that when I went to Panama and interviewed for management companies, I had the right questions and I kind of knew what the right answers should be. Well, we hired this company called Hale Forestall. Here's a picture of a Jacobo, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years ago. But back then in 1998, 1999, Jacobo was just a field engineer, a project engineer. Today, he's general manager and partner in the business. So this guy has grown with the business over the last 25 years. He got the job for a couple reasons. The biggest reason Hale Forestall got the job was that they make the seedlings. They don't make the seedlings. They grow the seedlings that almost every other forestry company in Panama was using at the time for their teak plantations. And I said to myself, well, gosh, if these guys are making the seedlings, they probably know how to get good trees. The other reason, that was sort of the technical reason. The other reason was Jacobo, I just measured him as a stand-up person. And you know what? When you're getting into a 25-year relationship, and it's actually more than that, that's just the first harvest, right? When you're getting into long-term relationships, it's like a marriage, right? You want to make sure that you're getting involved, marrying somebody who's going to be a good partner over the long term. And Jacobo was someone that I really read that in, and he has been for all these years. The reason the Darien province is so great for growing teak is it's got, the second one, fertile alluvial soil, right? Elevation's right, the rainfall's right, the temperature's right. But that first one, number one there, 3 to 5 months of dry season is absolutely critical, because it's the dry season that takes the teak wood and cures it and makes it really, really hard. Teak will grow in a rainforest where it can rain every day of the year, and it'll actually grow bigger and faster. But the wood it produces is softer. And so it doesn't get the qualities that make teak so prized in the marketplace. This dry season, 3, 4, 5 months of absolutely no rain, that's what does it. And the Darien province of Panama has all of the other factors plus that one. And that one is the most important factor. You can see seedlings, little baby trees, 19 in the nursery, 1998. That's what they look like. And then they just, we took a cattle pasture. We cut the brush out of it, right? It had already been deforested, right? Now we just took the brush out and we planted about 44,000 teak trees. And here they are about a year later. You can see some of the leaves in the background, but you can see very quickly, 7 years into it, 8 years into it, I mean, these trees are tall and they're being managed well, tall, straight trunks. But this is the dry season. This is when the leaves are deciduous and they drop their leaves And it's actually it's the time of the year that the trees gain that hardness, right? But the really good thing about teak, because we do get this question. In fact, we're going to have Q&A at the end. Betsy's here. She'll probably get a question about it, but I'll answer it now. And that is, what about fire, right? Teak, as you can see, a lot of the leaves come down, but all the branches get cut off low, because what you want to do is you want to create tall, straight trunks, because that's what makes good lumber, right? And ultimately, this is about lumber. But what it also does is it makes the leaves come down, hit the floor. So when you get a fire, it's not if, when you get a fire, because you do get fires, right? You have fire maintenance, and we have fire breaks, and we have people on site and can control it, right? But you will get a fire. They don't burn the trees because there's nothing to burn down close to the ground. And that's really, really important. I always like to talk about my friend Steve Sugarroot. Steve and I have known each other since 1997. We've known each other a long time. But look what he says here. Trees grow through recessions. They grow through wars and stock and real estate crashes. They grow through everything. They give you built-in investment growth that you won't get in a stock, right? And so we can all remember 2008 to 2012, the horrible real estate market, right? I mean, a huge crash, right? The Great Recession, right? The trees kept growing. The trees just simply kept growing. By 2006, you can see they're getting a lot taller, a lot bigger. The thinnings have been happening to spread them out so they can grow. We were actually able to acquire another plantation. This is a teenage plantation. We bought a plantation that was 12, 13 years old because we wanted to have something that was a little closer to harvest, and some folks, out having fun. A lot of folks like yourselves who come down, and here's the actual plantation, the mature plantation that we'll start harvesting 1 year from right now, the original plantation. So let's talk about why people are looking at teak, and why it's the ultra savvy, right? Because the bottom line is that there are three principal reasons people invest in teak. The first is pretty easy, and it's obvious, right? It's because deforestation is happening incredibly around the world. I mean, the forests are being cut for, cattle pasture, soybean pastures, right? Whatever. And so when you reforest a cattle pasture or land that's been cleared, right, you truly are giving back to Mother Nature in important ways. The global supply is going down and the demand is going up. And we know this because of two things. We know this because of the price. I'll flip to the next one. The price of teak, the average price of teak in the marketplace for the last 52 years, right? I did the math, right? Since 1972, and 52 years, has gone up on average 5.5% a year. So you've got this supply and demand imbalance, but talk about a track record of the commodity lumber, right? Teak lumber, 5.5% per year over a 52-year time period. So long track record. But now it gets even worse for the environment, but better for investors, right? They're still harvesting teak 8 to 10 times faster than it's being replanted. And when you just start to factor that into the supply and demand economics, you can just imagine what that's going to continue to do to price over the long term. And what we also know about timber, generally, teak specifically, is you get these above average returns. You can see the inflation is the bottom one, S&P, right? And then the timber index, right? It has outpaced the S&P, but without the volatility of stocks, right? So you get this incredible long-term investment, and the numbers are staggering, right? If you had invested in a timber portfolio back in, 1971, I think, yeah, 1971, it would have grown from $10,000 to about $1.5 million. I understand hindsight's 2020, but this has repeated itself over and over and over again. And more than likely, it's going to continue to repeat itself in the future. And here's some proof positive of why people believe that. You've got people like Malone, Turner, Emerson. These guys, by the way, these guys are old. Look at them. I mean, they're old, right? Look at me. I'm kind of old. But anyway, I'm still planting teak. These guys are still planting timber with 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, and 40-year time frame. Some of the stuff they plant is harvested in 40 years. And they're still planting it because they've moved from this idea of doing it for themselves to an idea of generational wealth stewardship where they're doing it for their kids their grandkids or maybe even their great grandkids, right? And so they understand the power of timber as a generational wealth stewardship tool, and that's what these guys are doing. And and then there are folks like you and who've come down to hug their trees. I love when people hug their trees, right? I mean, so come on down. We'd love to have you come down and see your trees. And we have lots of trips. In fact, Betsy, but at the end, you can pull up the dates for the Panama Discovery Tour. I'll let you talk about
Yeah,
that a little bit. I don't
absolutely.
Thank you, because I don't remember them. Anyway, but I'll be there. I have my plane tickets. I know I'm going. I just don't know when yet. Anyway, but yeah, so we hope that you will come down and see your trees, see the plantation, right? So why do people like Malone and Turner and these other, these mega family offices, big family offices, but endowments like Harvard and others, right? They have a lot of their assets in timber. So why do they do it? Well, we talked about a track record of the lumber for the last 50 years going up 5.5% a year. But teak as a plantation product, right? Teak has been grown in plantation for almost 4 centuries. It started with the British back in India, what was Burma now, today Myanmar, and other parts of Southeast Asia, right? The Brits started growing teak in plantations, 360, 370 years ago. And so this commodity, this crop, let's call it a crop, has proven its worth for centuries. And here are some of the reasons. Hard, we mentioned that before, hard and durable, right? Resistant to bugs and fungus and rot, which is why they use it on the picture on the right, boats, right? It's impervious to rot and fungus, which in a marine environment would be likely. So anyway, centuries it's proven itself. And then as a commodity in the marketplace, it's expensive. I mean, here's an Adirondack chair for $800, right? I mean, crazy. If you bought that out of pine, it'd be 250, right? So 4 times the kind of price between something made out of teak. But an Adirondack chair made out of teak is going to last a long, long, long time. A bath mat for 250, right? People putting in teak hardwood flooring, and we'll talk more about that in a minute as well. Teak gates, again, in an outdoor use, but saying, hey, I'm gonna use the highest quality wood to build my products, right? Whether it's outdoor furniture that again will just last forever, and even a chair, from the bottom of the ocean. The Titanic had teak chairs for good reason, right? It was a high quality product. And anyway, so here's a picture of the forest. You saw this picture before. Crazy like a fox, because again, the people across the street thought, "Gosh, you're crazy, Cobb. 25 years, right?" But 25 years, it's here. It's now. And the nice thing about a teak investment with us, and they're not all the same, but our teak investment is that you actually own the land. You get title to the land. It's yours. You own it. You own the trees, right? And you build a legacy. But we'll talk about the legacy part in a minute. But the idea of owning the land and owning the trees is simply that in 25 years, when we cut down the trees that we planted in 1999, we get to replant on that same land. And in 25 more years, there's another harvest. Well, that's the legacy part, right? And then those trees are cut down. There's a big windfall for the kids or the grandkids. The trees are replanted, right? And in 25 years, there's another windfall for the great grandkids or whatever it is, right? So you're building a legacy because you own the land, you own the trees, and you create this 25-year cash flow machine. Why is that important? People sometimes think about cash flow, right? Oh, let's just think about it for a minute. I get a paycheck every 2 weeks. If I'm a landlord, I get a rent check every month, right? If I own some dividend paying stocks, I might get a quarterly dividend or an annual, dividend, right? So those are all cash flow cycles, 2 weeks, 1 month, quarter, and year. But 25 years is a cash flow cycle. It's just a cash flow cycle that 99.999% of average investors never think about, because you would think 25 years, that's not a cash flow cycle. But it is, because you own the land, you own the trees, and every 25 years, you get this huge windfall. You replant, and in 25 years, the next generation gets the windfall. And that's why these big family offices and endowments have been doing this type of thing for centuries, going all the way back to the Brits and even before that. But with teak, 360, 370 years. So,
hi, everybody. Mike Cobb in Panama at our teak plantation. This is our mature plantation planted 23 years ago in the Darien province. I mean, just a beautiful, beautiful teak plantation that once was a cattle pasture like this, deforestation. And you know what? It's wonderful to be able to come in and plant thousands and thousands of teak trees and turn a cattle pasture back into forest. It's also a very lucrative investment, and it's sustainable. You harvest in 25 years, you replant. Your children get the next harvest. 25 years later, there's another harvest. That's for your great grandchildren, and so on and so on. Please give us a call. We'd love to hear from you. Find out how you can take deforested farmland and turn it into beautiful forests and create generational wealth for your families for centuries in the future.
Yeah, that was a couple years ago, but you can see the trees just grow and grow and grow. And so we're gonna pause here just for a second. The mature plantation that you just saw is sold out. That one's completely sold out. We have our teenage plantation. I think the trees are now 17 years old. And
18.
what is it, Betsy?
18.
18 years old. Okay, so 18 years old. I definitely need to update my slides, so thank you. I will do that. But the time to harvest is much sooner, right? Because if they're 18 years old and the harvest is in 25 years, that's what, 7, 8 years to a harvest. So and then there's the newborn teak, which is really the teak that we just simply plant right now for just about 7,000, right? $6,880 turns into $94,000 over, 25 years. And, and look, I think this is why it's such an incredibly accessible investment. Like if these guys, the Malones and the Turners, I mean, they do thousands or millions of acres, and they are putting in hundreds of millions of dollars to make it. If you have tens to hundreds of millions of dollars, timber was an asset class that you could access as an average investor for forever, right? But if you had $7,000 to invest, right, you could not get into timber. But we've helped make that possible. We've taken something that would take millions of dollars to get involved with and brought it and made it accessible to so many more people. $7,000 turns into $94,000. And I would hope that almost everybody on this call, certainly if you're taking your time with us tonight, you've said to yourself, you know what, I have 7,000 or more that I can invest in something like Teak, right? It's not a big investment. And the idea of gifting it, and we'll talk more about that later, but the idea of gifting it is powerful as well. Because if we already have all the stuff we need, we've been successful, we've got our investments, we've got our home, and our cars are paid for, and yeah, we're okay, right? We can then gift something like Teak to the next generation, or even the next generation, the grandkids, right? Or the great grandkids in some cases, and really pass that wealth into the future. And as you can see, a small investment, for a grandkid who's maybe 10, right, today, when they're 35 years old, they're going to get a check, $95,000 check. By the way, that's without the 5.5% growth, right? We've just said, look, if Teak in 25 years is worth the same price as what it's worth today, this is the kind of return. If Teak continues to appreciate in value, which we believe it will, supply and demand, you're cutting it down 8, 10 times faster than it's being replanted, right? Chances are it's probably going to be worth more in 25 years than it is today. But if Teak just stays flat, the price of lumber stays where it is today, in 25 years, this investment is a significant return. And then the old Chinese proverb that many of you probably heard, right? The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, or Teak 25 years ago. The next best time is today. And this is your opportunity to do that today, right now, for yourself, for your kids, for your grandkids, to begin to create that legacy where you can make the investment that will be meaningful, significantly meaningful in the future. And I'm going to shift gears a moment because this is very, very relevant to the teak investment. When we planted those teak trees back in 1999, we weren't really sure about this. Maybe by 2000, it took us about a year to kind of maybe understand the impact of what we were doing, right? We looked at it. We said, we're just going to plant the trees, and 25 years we'll cut them down and sell the logs. And then we started to do a little more research and talk to Jacobo and some of the other people. And what they said was, you understand that the difference between a log price and lumber is another like 10x. Like, really? Yeah, that's the difference. And so very quickly by the early 2000s, we were thinking and planning that when we got close to the mature harvest, which is exactly right now, a couple years out, about a year and a half out from the harvest, or almost, that's 14 months. It's actually not that long anymore. We would build a sawmill to take the logs, turn them into lumber, so that we would capitalize on that, that extra 10x difference. And that's the returns that we talk about. The sawmill is located in the same area, Darien, outside Panama City, traffic issues, some other stuff, but very, very strategically located near the plantations. The sawmill design is pretty simple. We've got a thinnings. We're going to practice on the thinnings this year. The harvest in 26 for the mature plantation will be the first, but we're going to ramp it up to about 4,500 board feet a day coming out of the mill. This is sort of how it looks. It's a mill that takes the logs, turns it into lumber, but we're also going to do something a little more interesting. We're going to take it to what we call semi-finished product. So think about this for a second. If you have a log and you turn it into boards, how much harder is it to turn your board into hardwood flooring, right? Hardwood flooring is just a nicer finish. Maybe it has a routing on one side, a bullnose on the other so that they can abut, right? But to actually go to the semi-finished, you actually get another multiple in value. Now you're creating a semi-finished product, a retail product that can move into that retail distribution channel through wholesalers. We're not going to sell retail, right? But instead of selling the lumber to the mills in the States that would take it and turn it into flooring, we're actually going to do that work right in Panama, where we have the cost advantage, the economy of scale to do it, and then ship the hardwood flooring to the United States and Canada, probably Europe as well. So that's the finished, semi-finished but finished product, floors and floor panels, and some other things with some of the leftover products. The residual product, the sawdust, for example, can be turned into many different things: fuel pellets, compressed boards. So there are a lot of ways to utilize what would ultimately and otherwise be thrown away. And then there's some innovative products in the marketplace where you actually mix in the cellulose part of the wood, the teak especially, into cement, and you create a very strong, durable product that can be used locally in Panama in the construction industry. So we're actually going to use everything all the way through, grind up everything, and bring it in and actually turn it into products that can be used either in the Panamanian marketplace for the construction products, or the lumber and the finished, semi-finished products in the US and Canada. The other thing that we're doing is we're getting our forest and our sawmill FSC certified. What that says is it says that we are doing things in a sustainable manner. They evaluate how you grow the trees. Are you going to replant? Have you followed all the processes and procedures? Do you have all the licenses to do it? I mean, there's a lot of illegal logging around the world, right? And so companies like Home Depot, Lowe's, big wholesalers in the US and Canada and Europe, they won't touch anything unless it has an FSC certification. And very, very little of the teak coming out of Panama has this certification. Very little of the teak has it. So we'll have it. We'll have the certification. Our mill will be certified so that the actual lumber itself going into that wholesale distribution channel in the US has the FSC stamp. And that means a lot in the marketplace. So why teak? Why right now? Talk about the legacy, right? We've talked about that. Generational wealth. Every 25 years, there's a big harvest. It is a hard asset. It's a tangible asset. It's a real asset. The lumber itself is a commodity. It's real. It has function. It has use, and it has demand in the marketplace. Those are all really, really important things. On top of that, you own the land. The land itself is a hard asset, right? And you plant the trees again. So the commodity is a hard, tangible asset. The land underlying it is as well. It's possible to use a self-directed IRA to own teak. Betsy has some information on that, and she can share some of it's a little bit more complex. I probably wouldn't do it for a parcel or two, but if you have a large number of parcels that you want to put inside a self-directed IRA, you can definitely do that, and it starts to become very, very exciting. We also take crypto as payment. We take metals as payment because in my mind and in the mind of my business partners, we're trading one hard asset for another. If you have crypto, we'll take it. If you have metals, we'll take it. and will in trade, give you, it's not give, trade for the land and the teak plantation. So we do accept those. And then, Betsy, I don't know if we want to talk too much about this tonight. I really wanted to stay on the gifting and some of the technical pieces of that. But if people have questions, you could certainly answer some of those when we get to that point about how you can obtain a residency through the teak ownership. This is the one for Panama. A $200,000 investment in teak will give you 28 parcels. Again, you own the land, you own the teak, but it also gives you the special nations visa in Panama. And that $200,000 investment would turn into about $2.8 million over the 25-year period. So again, we have this. And in Nicaragua, I know that's sort of a yucky word for a lot of people. It's not for me. I lived there for 14 years and have worked there for 20, goodness gracious, 25 now, 26 years. Anyway, there's some residency options in Nicaragua as well, but just wanted to put that up. So if you're looking at teak as a gift, or you're looking at it as an investment, a couple options starting around $7,000, going up to about $25,000 for the teenage teak. But I also want to just talk about, because we're coming up to the end of the year, and I just was speaking at a conference in Miami last week, and some of the folks were talking about the gift tax exclusion, right? You can gift anyone. You can, your wife can, your husband can, whatever. You can gift anyone $18,000 this year. There's no taxes for you. There's no taxes for them, right? And so what we've done is we've put together some gift tax packages. So 3 newborn parcels at 6880 would be 20 grand. We've put 3 of them together and they come in right under the gift tax number of, so 17,886. So it's about a $2,700 savings, 3 parcels, $2,700 savings, and you can gift a kid or a grandkid. And you could, if you have 5 kids, you could make 5 gifts, right? There's no limit to the amount of gifts you can make. It's just the dollar volume. And then we're going to sweeten it because we're coming up towards the end of 24. And if you say, look, I like this idea, I'm going to take a bigger bite. If you also commit to the 25 program, the number went up a little bit. It went to 19,000. You 3 more packages for the 18,886. We'll throw in an extra parcel in the 25. So you're going to end up with 4 parcels in 25. If you do the 24, be very clear because people say, oh, you said. But anyway, I did say, if you do 24 with 3 parcels and you do 2025 program with 3 more parcels for a total of 6, we'll throw in a 7th parcel for free. So you'll end up with a savings of about $8,600 in the 2025 program. When you combine it all together, you're going to own 7 parcels, invest for 6. Total investment's about $36,000, a savings of $11,000. But your $36,000 gift, if you said I'm going to do 3 parcels for my kid in 24 and 3 more, but it's really 4 more in 25, you're going to be into it for about $36,000. In 25 years, they're going to pick up $660,000. If things, it's the future, who knows, right? We got to qualify that, of course. But if teak prices just simply stay where they are today, you're going to end up with about $600,000. So as you can see, there's some powerful ways to use gifting as a mechanism to pass real wealth into the future. Who knows? And by the way, the great thing about something like teak is, if there's rapid inflation, crazy inflation, it is a hard asset. It is a commodity, and presumably it will do well in an inflationary environment. So in today's dollars, $36,000 turns into $600,000 in 25 years. So we really are passing incredible wealth into the future when we give the gift of teak. So that's how you get a hold of us. I think you already figured that out because you're on this webinar. Betsy, I'm going to open it up if we have questions. I may punt some of them to you because I think some of them are more specific to some of the technical answers. But let's
Yeah, well,
work together and see what we have.
First, do we want to go over the upcoming Discovery Tour in Panama?
Yes, please.
Let
Absolutely.
me share my
Okay.
screen
I will stop sharing and give that.
so that I can get that on there for folks to see. Okay. So, like Mike was saying, we do have a discovery tour coming up in Panama. Um, it is January 26th through the 27th, so that's a Sunday and a Monday. The first day we'll be going down to the Teak farm. It'll be me, it'll be Mike, a few other folks who are familiar with the property. And one of the neat things is that on this trip, we'll also be going to the sawmill site, which is not something that we've ever been able to do before on one of these
Oh,
tours. So it's going to
and
be a fun day. It's a great trip down. We've got lots of time to get to know other teak owners, other people who are looking at teak on the bus right down to the Darien, and you go to a part of Panama that most tourists don't get to go to.
ever, right?
Um,
Right.
and
And
then the
Betsy,
second,
and Betsy,
yep,
hold on. And Betsy, you've promised me that you're going to cut the crust off the peanut butter and jelly
nope.
sandwiches this year, didn't you? Didn't you?
Maybe,
No. Anyway, maybe.
maybe,
Hey, look, I'm teasing
depending
Betsy a
on
little
who
bit.
signs up.
There you go. But we do. We have a lot of fun. You're going to be with some really interesting people. But let me mention the sawmill real quick before you go to day two. If you're game and you want to do it, the sawmill will be operating, right? And so put on some hearing protection and push a log through the sawmill, right? I mean, that's going to be part of the fun of the day. So yeah, we're going to walk around the teak forest, which is a very quiet experience. You'll hear some howler monkeys usually making some noise, and very tranquil, peaceful. But then we're going to go to the sawmill and we're going to watch how you take those teak trees and turn them into lumber, and you can help on that as well. So anyway, it's going to be a fun day. That's Sunday, right, Betsy?
That's Sunday, January 26th. And then
Okay,
on the Monday, we have a special private tour to the Miraflores Locks, which is a huge part of the Panama Canal, where our finished product will presumably be going through when it makes its way up
absolutely.
to the North American market, and then followed by a lunch in Casco Viejo, which is the old town of Panama City. So if you're interested in joining, you can join both days. You can join one day or the other, up to you, but it's going to be a great time. We are limited to 15 spots on this tour, and I think we've got about 5 or 6 of those reserved already, so just a handful of spots left. But if you want more information on that, you can register online by going to eci.com/events, and you'll see the Panama Discovery Tour, or pop us a note here in the Q&A section, and we'll make sure that your property consultant gets you that information, so that you can register to join us for both days, one or the other. So hope to see some of these folks with us in January, which is coming right up.
It sure is. And by the way, this is the first of our Teak webinars. I think we have two more coming up. And generally, these are what drive people's interest in coming to Panama and seeing the plantation firsthand. So really, if you're on this, you are on this first of our Teak webinars. So if you want to come down, you want to see it, please look at your dates, make sure they line up with what you're available to do, and then book the Discovery Tour. Come on down. There's nothing really like seeing it with your own eyes, walking through a forest, and then coming over to the sawmill to see how we take those logs and turn them into very, very valuable teak lumber.
Yeah. All right. Well, it looks like we've got a few questions here in the Q&A, and if anything else comes up while you're listening, please drop it into that chat box. But the first one we have is from Perry. Is there a time when you would harvest in more than 25 years? Say if there wasn't a dry period to make the wood hard. Great
Yeah,
question.
Perry, thank you. Actually, even though the trees grew during COVID, and they did grow during COVID, there were a lot of issues with getting workers to the site to do the maintenance, and we actually missed 2 maintenance seasons. The maintenance seasons is really sort of the late spring, kind of into early summer in North America, and so we missed 2 of those seasons. So we actually have let the mature plantation grow an extra 2 years. Well, we have one more year now and one more year next year. So we extended the growth so we could get in, we could do the maintenance. Because what happens is if you don't do the thinnings and you don't trim, they call them the sons and daughters that shoot up from the bottom, they take a lot of the nutrients and they take a lot of the growth away from the girth of the tree. And that's really where the money is. You want tall trees as well, right? So you can get as many 8 to 10 foot sections out as possible. But imagine this, let's say a 1x4 board is worth X. A 1x6 board, even though it's 50% bigger, might be worth 80% more because it's wider. When you get up to a 10-inch board or a 12-inch board, a plank, right, made out of teak, the value of that is not just say 3 times more. I mean, 4 times 3 is 12, right? It might be 10 times more because there's only one of them in a tree or 2 of them in a tree, right? So the girth of the tree is really what creates the value of the high value of the lumber, and so the extra 2 years. But the answer to your question is that there's sort of a time value of money curve. 25, 26, 27 years. That's sort of where you get this kind of hockey curve, kind of just there's no value in teak for a long, long time. And somewhere around year, I don't know, 16, 17, 18, there's what I would call the first truly commercially viable thinning, right? So you start to get some uptick on your ROI. You're going to get a little bit of ROI. Then you're thinning in years, say 22, 23. It's sort of the last of the thinnings. You get this nice steep curve. And around year 25, from say 25 to about year 40, the curve still goes up, but it kind of flattens off. And then when you get up to somewhere around 40, 50-year-old teak, you start to get into the ability to make veneer out of it, where they actually take the log, put it on a lathe, and they spin the log, and they just trim off this tiny little, whatever, 1/16 of an inch thick veneer of the teak. And then the value on that is astronomical. So you kind of get this curve that goes up pretty steep, flattens off some, and then jumps way, way up when you hit veneer. So the time value of money is really 25 to say 30 years. You don't get much in between, say 25 and 40 in terms of the time value of money. So you're far better off to harvest around year 25 to 27, 28, replant and let it do it again in the next 25 years. So that's the cycle that works for plantation teak most effectively as an investment on a time value of money.
All right. So the next question we have is from Thomas. Can the teak be gifted to a minor?
Yes, the teak can be gifted to a minor, but the major, the adult, would have to stay on the title until the minor becomes an adult. Betsy, I see you nodding. I know there's a
Correct.
process there. Can you elaborate
It's
for us?
It's a bit of a process, so they do have to have their legal guardian on that title paperwork until they turn 18. I don't think we've had anybody who has actually gone ahead and done that at this point. We've had a few folks who are considering it, but for various reasons, they have not done that. So what some people have been doing is putting the teak into a corporate structure, whether that's an
Yeah.
LLC in the States or a Sociedad Anónima in Panama, putting all the kids, grandkids, as members of that corporation, so that when the beneficial owner pass on, it transfers over and it's a much smoother process. So
Right.
that's certainly an option.
Right. And the articles in the corporation can define how the ownership, but that is the more efficient way to do it, Betsy. You're right.
Mhm.
And I think if you had one kid for one parcel, you probably wouldn't do that because the friction costs probably
Mhm.
too high. But if you were doing multiple parcels to multiple kids, and so in your corporate document, you can define, this parcel's for Bob, this one's for Sue, this one's for Tom, whatever. So
Mhm.
so it gives you a lot of flexibility in how you handle that. That's the easier method than putting a minor kid on a title. But it's also possible. It's just
Mhm.
a more complicated process.
Yep. Doable, but just a bit longer. Larry asked, why do you need us to invest? What is the benefit to developers and current owners?
Sure, easy. You'll see if you request more information that we, as a company, we earn 20% of the return that we generate for you. That's how we make the bulk of our money. There's a little bit of money on the front end, but not a lot of money. I mean, you're selling something for $7,000. How much money can you make, right? But you, in the end, you get $94,000. But the actual number of that Teak's about 120,000. There's a processing cost. I mean, it costs money to, turn it into lumber. So there's a milling cost, right? There's a transportation cost. You got to get it out of the forest to the mill, right? But on that $120,000 that will be generated, we get 20 of it. You get 94, right? But we get 20 of it. And so what we're doing, because I believe in generational wealth stewardship, obviously I do. I planted 100 acres of teak back in 1999. I definitely believe in this. I'm 60 years old this year, right? Maybe I'll make another 25 years. What's that, 85? Yeah, I should make that actuarially. I think I get to 86, right? So whatever. So I can probably see the next 25. But the point is that I have kids. They don't have grandkids yet, but someday I probably will have grandkids. And you know what? This 20% that we get as a management company for taking care of the plantation for you, with you for the next 25 years, that's real money. Like every time you get 94, I get 20. And so we want to make that happen as many times as possible. So the real juice in this project for us is the back end, where my kids, my grandkids, my great grandkids are going to start picking up big chunks of money for the 20% that we get for delivering the most to you. By the way, the thing that I also like about the arrangement is it aligns our interests very, very clearly together. Because if I can get 130,000 or 150,000 or 200,000 for that same parcel in 25 years, or my team can, you know what? Instead of making 20,000, I'm going to make 40,000, right? And I want to make more, not less. So if I make more, you make more. And so our interests are absolutely and perfectly aligned because the 20% is a percent of what you get. So the more I make for you, the more I get as well. It's a great alignment, but it's a great question, Larry. Thank you for asking. It's an important one.
All right. So then next, Daniel says, is there any ongoing cash flow, and what are annual fixed costs?
Yeah. So there's some thinnings in there. The first one, I think they make fence posts or something. It's a de minimis kind of number. Like I said, you get around year 16 to 18. There's some small commercial value thinnings in the 20s, say 22, 23-year-old trees. There's some money in that. The feasibility study lays it all out very specifically. What's the maintenance fee, Betsy? It's
The maintenance
150,
fees are one
150 a year.
about 150. I think they went up a little bit, but I'll have to let me double check that while
Do that. And let me explain. When
yeah.
I say they went up, I think, we've tied the increase, because there will be increases if there's inflation, but we've tied any increase on the maintenance fee to the Panamanian equivalent of the CPI. So if inflation in Panama is, 4%, then we're going to raise the maintenance fee 4%, right? If it goes crazy, we're going to raise it 10%. But you know what? The value of your lumber goes up too, because theoretically and, historically, commodities have kept up with inflation, or in many cases done better than inflation. But there are maintenance fees every year for the plantation. But is it, you have the number,
So
Betsy?
yes, so it's 150 for the teenage teak, and
Okay.
it's 185 per parcel for the newborn teak, just because
For the
they
baby.
require a little bit more,
Yeah.
a little bit more work to take care of them in those first couple of years.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Michelle, how does this investment compare to, say, bamboo as far as ROI?
Great question. I have no idea. We can provide the feasibility study with some of these numbers. And, if you have feasibility studies for bamboo, draw the comparison. And in fact, send Betsy an email and she'll forward it to me. I'd be curious to know
Yep.
too. So if you do the math, let us know. I'd love to know that. Bamboo, by the way, is a much shorter time frame. I think bamboo is in maybe a 3 to 5 year, from what I've heard.
Yeah, it grows at a much quicker rate than teak
Yeah,
does, and doesn't
right.
need all the same environmental factors. So probably quite a bit different there, but oh, Michelle says she's happy to stay in touch. Well, thank you, Michelle. We look forward
Thank
to
you.
reading that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love to learn, and that's
All
something I know nothing about. So yeah, that would be appreciated.
right. Arsen asked, what is the difference between the Panamanian and Nicaraguan teaks in terms of both quality and ROI?
Hmm. Almost identical. The coastline of Panama from really Panama City east, the Darien province, because it's kind of it's a function of geography. It's almost it's too big to call it a microclimate, but it has a very pronounced dry season. When you get to Panama and you start going west and you get into Costa Rica all the way to Manuel Antonio, which is kind of halfway up Costa Rica, you actually get more into jungle. A lot of rain. You don't get that really pronounced dry season. When you get from Manuel Antonio, Costa Rica, up through Nicaragua and even into El Salvador, you get back into this really pronounced dry season. And so the very eastern part of Panama and from, say, certainly the Guanacaste Peninsula of Costa Rica up through El Salvador, those two areas give you the dry season that you need. Elevation's pretty normal. The soils are very similar throughout the region. So a lot of the other boxes I would say are fairly equal. The dry season is the big factor, and sort of that Panama City over to about the middle of Costa Rica. You don't quite get that. But there are some teak plantations in and around Manuel Antonio that have done very well. So that's kind of where you start to get into that dry season again as you move further north and west along the coastline.
All right. Larry's got another great question that I think a lot of people are probably wondering about. What is the tax impact of owning land and earning a large sum at one time in Panama? Any tax planning that can be done to lower taxes?
Well, you know what? I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a tax advisor. I'm not going to give any legal or tax advice tonight. Um, consult your tax advisor. How's that? But look, I think that you certainly do want to consult a tax advisor. But that's one of the reasons people put things like Teak into trusts, right? Because trust never dies. There's no estate tax on a trust, right? It's depending how you set it up. But if you set up a long-term trust somewhere, like there's no end to it, right? So these harvests can happen again and again and again. They happen inside the trust. Now, distributions are a different thing, right? Or if you have it, say, in your self-directed IRA, if you're young enough, at some point you have to start taking the minimum withdrawals from your IRA. So you wouldn't want to load up on Teak inside an IRA because then you wouldn't have the cash to take those RMDs. But if you're young, right, if you're in your 30s, say, or 40s, actually Teak inside an IRA is great because it's going to grow. You're going to get your harvest inside your IRA. It's fully tax deferred, right? It's not tax free, but it's tax deferred. So I think there's some tax smart ways to own Teak, but you'd want to talk to a tax professional to find out what's right in your specific circumstances, right? Because I think general answers are great. But in something like this, a specific answer to you and your specific circumstances are what you're going to be after. We can certainly provide information about, when and how the harvest happen and what the projected returns are to look like. That information can then be used in conjunction with the tax advisor to figure out where the best location to own those assets are in your, in your portfolio or your, financial circumstances.
Fantastic. From Perry, what is the loss percentage per unit? Number of trees per land owned. So I think,
Well, there's thinnings. I mean,
mhm.
you start with about 250 trees on a quarter acre, and when you go to harvest, you end up with about 25 trees, right? So your attrition rate is about 90%, right? But it's planned. Because you overplant at the beginning because what you want is you want crowding. You plant one tree every square meter because you want the trees to race tall and straight to get to the lights, and that gets you that very early tall straight trunk. You saw that 2007, 7, 8 year old trees. They were already really tall. They just kind of skinny, right? And then you thin them out and they start to grow fatter. They still grow a little taller, but the most of the height, I would say that 60, 70% of the height growth happens in the first 10 years, right? They still continue to grow taller, but the next piece is the girth. So it's really a planned attrition of about 90% from 250 down to 25 ultimately in your quarter acre parcel.
All right, and looks like we've got time for just about one more question. So who is purchasing the teak when it's matured after 25 years?
That's a great question. The marketplace that makes the most sense coming out of Panama, given that we're U.S. and Canadians working the business, the investors in the sawmill, the investors in the plantation, the U.S. marketplace is probably U.S. Canadian marketplace is probably the most logical entry point. We've got great connections into the wholesale markets there. Europe would certainly be an option, Asia, but they grow a lot of teak in Asia, and so. I don't know that would be a good market, but the U.S. Canadian marketplace is really the marketplace that we are going to focus on. In fact, a guy by the name of Ryan Palmer started our sawmill for us about a year and a half ago. We hired him to come down and do that. Once the sawmill's up and running, we're going to practice. We have a whole set of thinnings that we're going to practice on for the next 16, 17 months. You know what? We're going to break saws. We're gonna dry wood that we don't dry right, and it's gonna warp and bend. So we're gonna practice on our lumber. So by the time we do the harvest in 2026, we'll have most of it figured out. We won't have it all figured out. You never do, but we'll have most of the easy, dumb, big mistakes out of the way. And then the other piece of that, in addition to figuring out how to do it and do it well, again on our dime, is to then build the marketplace for the lumber and semi-finished products. But U.S., Canada, North America will probably be the biggest share of our export marketplace.
All right. Yeah, Norman sent a question in about that, but I think we covered that, Norman. Well, if anybody has any last minute questions, now is the time to put them in the chat box. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and our apologies again about the technical glitches at the beginning, but we're glad you stuck with us, and hope to see some folks signing up for our upcoming Teak tour in January. And if you have any other questions that come up later on, you can send an email again to info@teakhardwoods.com. And your property consultant will be in touch with you if you're ready to get going on some of those gifting bundles. Now it's holiday time, and now if you can't think of anything else to gift, I'd say gift Teak.
Yeah, give Teak. I mean, in 25 years, if you've passed on, and the kids or the grandkids get this big windfall, harvest proceeds, it's quite a wonderful way to be remembered. Grandpa, grandma, this money that we're getting right now came because they decided that they were going to, make a small investment 25 years ago that turned out to be a very big deal today. And I think it's important to think about how we will be remembered, and Teak gives us the ability to be remembered in a pretty big and positive way. So yeah, Betsy, you're standing by to help folks if they want to do that. The gifting has to be calendar year, so be aware of that and be careful. If you want to do something, you probably need to start looking at it and get some paperwork moving around in the next few weeks, right? It's not tonight, it's not tomorrow. I hate you got to do it today stuff. It's not, right? But if you're trying to pick up the 2024 gift tax, it is a calendar year, and everything shuts down in Panama the last 2 weeks of December. Like nothing is going to happen between Christmas and New Year's, even the week before Christmas. So, like, really, if this is something you want to do, get in touch, and we'll get the paperwork over. You can review everything and make sure it's something you want to do, but sooner rather than later to capture the 2024 calendar year. So. All right, Betsy, thanks for getting us all together, and
Thank you.
Thanks for solving our technical difficulties, and yeah, we'll look forward to seeing many of you in January in Panama. That'll be a lot of fun.
All right, thanks so much.
Bye.